Hey, this is Travis the Uncanny Valley. I'm going to talk about duty cycle as an analogy to help explain sensory overwhelm or sensory bombardment or meltdowns. So here's a little welder I got. I haven't used this in forever. It's just not a heavy duty welder. It's it's perfect for what it's perfect for, but it's not made to run hard nonstop. You'll notice on the label back here, it's got something called a duty cycle. Duty cycle on a welder is in tens of percent. So 10%, 20%, up to 100%. In the duty cycle, it's the number of minutes out of a 10-minute period that the welder can operate continuously. So 100% duty cycle means you're running it light enough or easy enough of a load uh, that it can run nonstop. And I don't even know if this particular one has a setting low enough that it can run at 100% duty cycle. So this is kind of like me, I guess, in a lot of ways, where if I need to work, then sensory overload is not as much of an issue because it's environmental sounds. I'm it's not hundreds and hundreds of people. Um, it's not lights and sounds that I need to involve myself with. I'm able to tune it out. It's still exhausting, and just the whole experience of really long work days. If I'm working with my tools, that can be overwhelming and really tiring. But it's not something that my mind is telling me that I need to interact with in the same way as a lot of other sensory stuff in different environments, especially in social environments. Duty cycle is kind of the little paradigm I was wanting to use to explain why some people get overwhelmed and some people don't. My brain is a little bit more like this little welder here, where there's there's some stuff where I can be doing that and I can run nonstop. Maybe longer, maybe longer than you could at it. I don't know, but then you get where if I'm in a large crowd, where indoors especially, and it's just the sound is overwhelming, or there's any number of things that can be overwhelming to me. But I guess the point is that um, the more that you expect out of this thing, that's fine. It has an upper limit of what it's capable of doing, like me. Um, but if you need it to do that, it's got to rest. And the cycle for a welder, it's based on a 10-minute period. So it's not like a 50% duty cycle means you can run it for 4 hours and let it rest for 4 hours. No, it's based on a 10-minute cycle. That would mean you could, at a 50% duty cycle, you could run it for 5 minutes at that setting, with ideal environmental factors, temperature and airflow and all that stuff. You could run it for 5 minutes and it'd need to rest for 5 minutes to cool off and be ready for another 5-minute run. So to carry that analogy over to people, obviously we're designed to run in different duty cycles. Ours isn't based on a 10-minute cycle, but my cycle's not going to be the same as yours. On a good day, I can work, 18 hours, but that's if I'm working by myself, I'm not dealing with people, maybe I'm getting up early and going to work and coming home and working out in the yard. I can run myself ragged if it's just me. But if you need me to uh, work with people all day, well, you're turning that knob up. If you need me to not just work with people, but to be in meetings, that's turning that knob up. If you need me to go to a social thing after work, if that's on the agenda, that I'm doing a thing with lots of people, if there's a ton of people there, especially if it's a ton of people that I'm not even going to be interacting with. It's not people that I can just look around the room and say, oh, I know them, and and whatever. It's just hundreds of people that are just there making extra noise. That's turning the dial up a lot more. So that's reducing the duty cycle. It's changing it from, where I could work 18 hours doing tasks that I'm better suited for. Um, the more stimulus, whether it's sensory stimulus or social stimulus, or any factor of other things that require more cognitive stimulus, like that stuff's draining. It's not that it's not draining for you at all. It's just that it happens to be more draining for me to have to deal with people, and that's partly because of um, our different styles of speaking from one neurotype to another. It can be exhausting. You think dealing with me is exhausting for you. Well, I mean, like, it's exhausting for me too. Like, not knowing what the other person's saying or trying to say with their potentially ambiguous or emotionally charged speech, where I'm listening to it with my uh, logic based mind. Not that you're not using logic yourself, but you're possibly having more emotional meaning or more figurative speech or more non-literal use of the words you're using. And so all of those things, all those differences, all the stimuli are just each cranking up the knob. And then you go adding to that throughout the day, um, it's cumulative. So that's further cranking up that knob. You get to points where you can't just push through because it's it's unbearable. Like, it's beyond your capacity to know how to function. Like, you don't have it in you to do what needs to be done to deal with humans after a certain point a lot of times. So, it's not just willpower. It's that I don't have it. Like, I don't have what it takes to endure a lot of the things that might come easy to you. And that might change my duty cycle down. Whereas if I start early in the day, I might have a duty cycle of 50, or I'll say 90, where, like, I can do this for 90% of an hour, and then I gotta, like, go away from all this for a few minutes and use the restroom or get some coffee or something, and then the next hour I might have a less than 90% duty cycle, and then the next hour I might have less than that. And it goes on throughout the day. And as much as it might not seem like it, like, I'm human, so, like, my resources are finite, and my give a care, it is quickly diminishing, um, because I don't have the same reward system in place for doing those very same tasks. I can lose my drive to accomplish the things, partly because they are superfluous to the actual task at hand. So hopefully that makes some kind of sense to it, that not all welders are the same. Not all people are the same. We have different capacities. And even this welder here, I mean, if I take this cord off it, this 110 cord, and put a 220 cord on it, that's like being well rested. I have a better power supply. I'm able to have a higher duty cycle for the same work. I don't have a little red light that flashes, and I don't get to just shut down and not give you answers. Um, I can't flash some code at you. It's very likely going to be a less healthy and more reactive response by the time that I realize that I'm shutting down, that I can't take this anymore. As a man, um, and not blaming this on society as a scapegoat, but, like, it's been more acceptable for men to express anger than any other emotion. So that's kind of conducive to having an outburst, often as the only known path towards cooling off, towards getting a little downtime from all the requirements of life. It's not that we have a lot of other options at our disposal typically, and that we're calmly choosing anger or calmly choosing to be overwhelmed. Like being overwhelmed is the unfortunate result. It's kind of like the frog in a pot. I mean, you don't often know that the temperature is getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter until it's too late. And by then, you're cooked. So I feel like I'm doing a lot better at this. Hopefully, if this is your struggle, that you can, maybe this visual will help you think of yourself as something that needs to figure out what your duty cycle is, what it's based on. It's not probably going to be 10 minutes, but what it's based on, um, given your factors of, how well rested you are and how healthy you're feeling and how well you've eaten, and whether you're doing the things that you can do to mitigate being overwhelmed, even if that's just stepping away from the people who don't respect those boundaries. And even if that's stepping away from the people who refuse to see those needs as needs, whatever it is, like you need to do that to be a healthier person, to figure out how to get through life in a healthier, more mature way. And if you're a neurotypical person who doesn't get why all these social things that are just so easy for you seem to be overwhelming for your friend or loved one, like, hopefully this helps make more sense of it, that like your duty cycle, like maybe you never reach your duty cycle. Maybe it's just based on the things that you do in your life. um, you're able to just recharge it every night. Maybe you get like some crazy, like 6, 8, 10 hours of sleep at night that a lot of us struggle to get, and you're able to be recharged for the next day. Like you're starting off at a better point, and then which means you're even less likely to be overwhelmed. So there's a lot of things at play, and it's hard to stay aware of all the factors all the time. But yeah, try to stay present. Hopefully you're doing good. Hopefully you're trying to do better, whatever your struggles are.